Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Justin Vaughan-Brown, VP Product Marketing here at Deep Instinct. And today we're going to be focusing on a really fascinating piece of work that a company called Unit 221B have undertaken for us, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But the focus here today is to look at how we've validated a lot of the technology and our approaches over time. And we've come up with a very catchy title, as you can see. Unit 221B validates Deep Instinct's greater than 99% zero-day threat prevention accuracy. We'll be testing you at the end of this webinar to see if you remember the title of it, because it's super catchy. Not. But anyway, hopefully it hooked you in, got you interested. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce at the start of this webinar, Lance James. Over to you, sir.
Hey, I'm Lance James. I'm the CEO of Unit 221B. Obviously slides are great, so I don't have to talk about myself too much on that. I guess I'll talk a little bit about what we do over what we've been up to lately. Just at 221B, obviously this has been one of our good projects, about a 3-month project on this, validating this, which is very exciting. We're doing a lot of red teaming, mostly zero-day type testing and visibility, purple teaming, as well as we're mainly an investigations house. So we actually investigate and disrupt criminal behavior, including the gaming industry, like the video game industry, and stalkers, and even actually, ironically, we're dealing with murder cases. So yeah, it kind of varies with us, but we basically are a company that combines cybersecurity, counterintelligence, and investigations together to help and partner up with people to ensure security and pretty much have a good time on the internet. So.
Thanks very much, Lance. Just to satisfy people's curiosity, do you want to maybe just mention how the name came about, Unit 221B?
Sure. Actually, it's a fun story. I have a friend, I won't mention his full name, but he used to work at the NCA as a, equivalently an inspector. And for the audience, NCA is the equivalent of the FBI in the UK. They work on national crime, mainly serious organized crime stuff. They call it that. I like to joke with them about how serious it is. But essentially, my buddy, he and I used to work together a lot, and we were, I didn't realize this until later. I was like, oh, I'm planning to start a company, and this was like in 2014 or 15. And he's like, please name it something that's subtle but Sherlock Holmes. And I'm like, why? He goes, because that's what you guys are for us. You're like consulting detectives. You help law enforcement a lot and disrupt the bad guys. And then, a few hours and a few drinks later at RSA, I came up with it as Unit. It's a bunch of people, but also an apartment, unit. And 221B. So we also kind of had a joke about it that it would probably get blocked on some of the domain would probably get blocked on some of the Mandiant type feeds because it looks like a Chinese domain, and we weren't wrong. So, yeah, so it was kind of fun when we created it. It's subtle. A lot of people actually don't get it, and we don't mind that as well. But yeah, it's kind of fun. It's just a culture that we have. We all kind of like Sherlock and sleuthing, and that's kind of where it went. So. Great
background story. Thanks, Lance. I think that's even your mug as well as a Sherlock Holmes one. So great.
Oh yes, little Sherlock.
Wonderful. Good. Thank you so much. So just to kick off, folks, I just want to kind of set the scene. For those who know Deep Instinct or just finding out about us, one of our core differentiators is our focus on deep learning. And deep learning has been around since pretty much the 50s and 60s, but only over the last maybe 10, 15 years or so are you seeing it come to the fore, primarily due to computing advancements, the rise of the cloud, etc. But what you're seeing time and time again is very established global innovators applying deep learning to different use cases and scenarios and making a massive difference. So I remember the days when I used to type a web search, using a keyboard. You can now use Siri for many use cases, along with web search and various other things. I remember renting DVDs or Blu-rays at my local store, whereas now you can have streaming with Netflix and Disney Plus and a whole heap of others. If you travel to a country you've never been to before, and you wanted to take a phrase book maybe, and I remember doing that. You don't need that anymore now with Google Translate, which can be incredibly effective and accurate and fast. If we don't feel like going to a store that day, we can just order via Amazon, and they can even in some cases deliver same day to you. So again, game changing. And again, if you're on a long car journey, you don't no longer now maybe need to use a cruise control. You could choose to use an autonomous car or such as a Tesla or others that make life easier for you. And all of these companies have applied deep learning in different ways. And primarily they've done that to help drive accuracy in what they do and what they're searching to do there, and efficacy and scalability. Very large companies with huge customer bases, massive data input and output, and so forth. And one of the challenges, though, with deep learning is the entry bar is high. You need a lot of very, very smart data scientists. You need a lot of huge computing power, and you're ingesting massive data volumes. And there is actually one downside to deep learning, which is it takes a while to ramp up and be effective. If you compare, say, with machine learning, you're going to get the initial results, initial outputs, and effectiveness much faster with machine learning. But once deep learning kicks in, then you're going to see a high degree of accuracy. It's all a question of ramping. And that's where we come in. So we've been around since 2015, and we're the only company that's developed a deep learning framework exclusively for the purposes of cybersecurity. Which brings us now onto the study, because one of the challenges that we've had is people wanting to see how a deep learning driven solution performs against others. So we work with a number of established benchmarking organizations, most recently with MITRE. We participated for the first time, and you can see our results on the website. There's a blog about it. And also other companies such as SE Labs. But primarily, they're either focused on detection and response, in the case of MITRE, or with SE Labs, on known threats. And where deep instinct and deep learning really shines is unknown threats. And Lance is going to talk a little bit more about the work that he and his company have done in a second. But I've been with the company since the start of March last year, and I presented to a bunch of people, so have our salespeople, so have our technical folks as well. And quite often, the biggest challenge that we face is after presenting or talking about this is we hear, first of all, I don't believe you. Or we say, nah, deep learning isn't that different. I actually heard that as recently as last week in InfoSec in London. It's not different to machine learning. It's just not possible. You can't do it. You can't deliver that level of efficacy. And then we get a challenge sometimes. Go on then, prove it, which again will bring us on to Lance and his team. Or that would be incredible. Wow, if you could actually reduce, say, the level of false positives, what would the impact for me and my team? And then lastly, some are really direct, depending on which city you go to, and they say that's just an 8-character expletive. I believe a few of those letters are B, U, S, H, and I. So as a Brit, I'm guessing they're saying that's just rubbish. That's probably what they're saying, I guess. But hey. So enough of our setup here. But before we go to Lance, over to you. I mean, you were a bit of a skeptic as well, weren't you, when you first started talking to you?
Oh, big time, actually. I've done some work in deep learning, and I've seen some of, it's a black box, right? So it's kind of easy to get a little skeptical. I've seen some of its, obviously, like you kind of pointed out, there's a lot of amazing things we're doing with deep learning and machine learning and AI and all that whole field. But when I look at a zero-sum game such as when a payload hits you and it causes massive impact, right? And all it takes is that one way of getting in. The entire team was quite skeptical, right? But yeah, it surprised us. I mean, you guys balanced it really well with, your deep learning technology, but also looking at I was surprised at how you guys handled the PowerShells and all the different other things. And it was just it was really built well. It seemed like you have a model for everything, and it was really cool to see us getting popped, and not, even with our custom scripts, most of the time getting popped, and you guys winning on that side. So it was actually quite surprising. Yes, we were definitely, we're paid skeptics. That's what we're supposed to be. So it was good to see something different in the next gen cybersecurity realm. So
thanks, Lance. Well, over to you now. I'll let you drive things for the next few slides now. Thank you.
Sure. So a little bit about why we did this project. I mean, obviously, we're, Unity would being the type of people we are culturally speaking, we're a curious bunch. We like adventure. We like things to challenge us. We also like, sometimes we're a little cocky and like to go, haha, they're gonna get broken, but we do love to break things and try for the good of helping others get secure, right? Not to tell you I told you so, but more like that. And so we look at our clients more like partners. We work together to do that. But why did we also work with this? There's also peace of mind. So my biggest complaint, and I'm totally would rant here if I had time, but I'll try to keep it short, is that a lot of vendors out there aren't actually solving any problems these days. And it's kind of frustrating because you spend so much money on buy decisions. Just the decisions alone on getting there costs a lot of customer acquisition cost as well, or vendor cost, or any time of people's times. that us being able to validate and test and say, hey, there's a product out there that actually is, gone through the run. And actually deliver what they said they did, because it's, there were some bold statements, I'm not going to lie, so that peace of mind kind of was like, all right, let's see, and let's put this to the test. And when we found that, it definitely gives us like, hey, there is a future in cybersecurity, because sometimes it can be very frustrating with the dilution of vendors out there that are claiming to do a lot of things and not, hitting the mark per se. And I like that you guys, that we got to see something trying to actually really solve the problem, looking at a problem. Also, to add to that, partnerships like this, when we do these types of assessments, third-party assessments, things like that, really do validate new vendors to come in the market, because people are trying to solve problems. And, as skeptical as we are, we have to remember that. And building this partnership allowed us to validate and prove that for both their side as well as us. And it moves us beyond like leaps of faith and when you're buying a product and making a buying decision as well. And that's really what we want to get people to, is like, hey, if you're going to go buy a product, most people wish they had these validations done on almost every product out there, right? Usually it's testimonials and this and that, but like that doesn't answer the numbers. And that's what people really want to see, that when they're making a good purchase, is like, is this really going to protect me from the unknown future, right? So those are a lot of the different reasons we did this. And then of course we were super curious to see the results, and today we're happy to discuss those a little bit today. So next slide.
Fantastic, Lance. Just before we go to the next slide, just a reminder, everyone, if you haven't already seen it, there's a question mark icon on your right there. As Lance kicks in with his analysis and summary, please do pop in your questions, and we have some time at the end, and we'll do our best to answer all your questions there. Thanks very much. Let me crack on there, Lance. Thank you.
Right. You want me to hit it?
Yep, sounds good.
Good. Okay. So the methodology that we used, so this is an important question, because you want to actually understand how we set this up, right? So we built it in a sense. So we treat it like similar to a red team, in the sense of red team's jobs are to write customs, malware, or find ways that are undetectable or bypass EDR, like EPPs, EDRs, all the different endpoint systems out there. On a typical red team are, without the Deep Instinct product, like we focus on trying to bypass the EDR so that we don't have to worry about getting our hook in our fish, right? So what we did was, for this environment, was we set up two VMs, one with Deep Instinct and one with the Microsoft Defender. We used Defender as kind of a baseline to understand, obviously, the default security there. Now, Deep Instinct integrates quite well with that. So you still had smart screen and cert codes and things like that. Which I thought, when I was being skeptical, I thought that would actually cause a bypass, because when we sign certificates and such like that, we assumed that because Defender might allow the executable that's unknown but signed in, that Deep Instinct did, but based on behavior, it did not. We had Python 3 installed, we had PyInstaller installed, both for making executables and such, and bringing things like that on there, so that we also did that. We had the default installed, plus PowerShell ISE. We put it on the highest security configurations for Deep Instinct. We were using an ESXi VMware servers with both virtual machines had 8 gigs of RAM and 120 gigabyte disks. Basically, emulating most endpoints, right? At a company. We created custom payloads and binaries. So I want to define the difference between custom and unknown. So custom for us is, as a red team, you will literally write malware customized to think what you might be able to make it go around the system or get around the system or be undetectable because it's brand new. Like you can customize it specifically for that. Good example is we wrote a DLL side loading injection attack against a code signed executable that wasn't known out there, that's on the system. And then what we did was try to throw a PowerShell, a command to do some shellcode for us or turn off a Deep Instinct, and it caught that and stuff like that. So, and the thing why that's important is DLL side loading is actually more of a feature than it is necessarily a bug, but we see APT attacks, but we customize this to do that. Now, unknown, as we define it, with virus total binaries that so Deep Instinct's model is trained and then it's out there. They don't update it like Aviva engines and things like that often. It's a fixed train system. So, and it was trained and modeled 90 days prior, basically in the 90 days. So anything after when we got started and such, it had a new train model. So we would then grab the last 90 days of virus total binaries and we would do them randomly. We do up to 100, do 1,000, things like this. and every single time it would like pop every single one of them. So these were unknown to VirusTotal because we sorted by date, like, hey, when was it trained, and then give us binaries and executions of the future, and let's try 100 at it. Okay, let's try 1,000 at it, like things like that. And then we also added 0-day macros and PowerShells. Going to give some props to MacroPack, who by a company called Matsalist. They helped build macros that actually get around AMC, the standard AMC stuff, very quick. So we built some 0-day macro shells and PowerShells, and these were proven to be undetectable by Defender. Whereas Deep Instinct was playing pretty well there, very well. I mean, I think 100% well. So we tested for the following hypothesis, and this is obviously on the screen, but at the same time, obviously, the claims that Deep Instinct have was above 99% accuracy, and that was actually an important number to look at because, that's a big claim, right? The platform detects malware and attacks for with 0.1% false positives. In our entire thing, and including we doing development literally on the system as if we were already on the system doing something like an insider. Everything that was normal never got popped, and everything that started like intensely getting malicious was always getting popped as we were writing it. Even Python code without compiling it, right? The platform is, and then the last one was the platform is adept at recognizing, automatically preventing previously unknown or custom 0-day attacks, which is why we wrote our own stuff. We also signed code signed to also see if it would get around like the typical APT stolen certificate problem, and then also the unknown VirusTotal binaries and executables that we just randomly push on there, and then also targetly push on there. So that was actually the environment that we set up, and this gave us kind of a baseline moving forward. So,
great. Thanks for setting the scene, lads.
Yep. So the key findings overall, with the brain successfully prevented attacks with 99.78% accuracy, which is obviously above 99%. This is a very good thing. I think you guys officially call this the brain. So the platform is adept at recognizing and automatically preventing previous unknown or custom 0-day attacks. It detected unknown, aka everything with VirusTotal that was unknown from the training day, like basically the day it was fully finalized as a training model. Everything after it, up to even 90 days past and stuff like that, it was finding. So if it was a brand new day, we could give me all the new stuff today, and it was finding those information as well. And it was actually the thing that was actually nice is also it was categorizing at the best it could quite well, actually. And when you go on the portal and stuff, you would see the categorization from the logs, and so you could get an idea of what was trying to attack your systems. It detected custom attacks with 96.4 accuracy, which is still very, very good. In this case, some of the things with code signing, some code signs did get in very little, but like some of the code sign was actually a thing that like dropped out, which is kind of normal. I mean, EDR, Microsoft's EDR it does actually a lot worse in this category. But this is actually really good and overall prevented all attacks at 99.78% accuracy. So this is obviously, it's hitting exactly what it wants to know about with all the numbers that it promised, and it is doing a great job with future and unknown attacks. And then also the 0.1% false positives, as I said before, there was no false positives that were identified. We were even developing on the box that had running Deep Instinct as if we were on a red team, and it was literally the minute we go into a malicious mode, it was like pop. When it was normal stuff, normal code, because we did purposely do that. It was just kind of run our machines with Deep Instinct as well, no false positives were identified. So we had 100% prevention across multiple type threats. So the unknown, the VirusTotal, always basically was always detected and prevented right off the bat. Code signing, it didn't matter if it was code signed or not, because what we would also do is take the VirusTotal binaries and code sign them with our certificate, and then try to also replay them through, and it still popped it based on the behavior. So it didn't rely on that signing as all forms of trust, which we've seen in some situations like the OS, unless it's doing something crazy, like something like a privilege escalation in Microsoft Defender is the only time we saw that actually change there, whereas a lot of times it would automatically trust the executable. We use Posh C2 to generate a lot of the shell code. Metasploit's obviously kind of obvious, so we're going to kind of want to go over where we could customize our own shell code. 100% prevented, which was awesome. Even inside and hiding inside of DLLs, things like that, it actually popped those really well. It prevented execution for every PowerShell. Malicious documents, Words, Excel, OneNote, a 100% prevention. which was actually impressive because I actually found some O-days in OneNote recently on how to lure and attack a user without any warnings. And it even stopped those type of attacks, right? Custom malicious scripts. We essentially ran it against links, HTAs, VBS attacks, other active scripts, obviously continued PowerShell attacks. Both signed and obfuscated attacks were blocked. Even when we signed a PowerShell script, that was actually blocked as well. And then custom ransomware. So we actually built our own ransomware just to see that if there's a brand new ransomware out there, like that we built and stuff like that, would it actually be accurate, right? And it actually, we tested against obviously the unknown sets of ransomware in the category on VirusTotal, and then we built a few different ones that we had different ways they do it based on the TTPs and based on how we might think we get around it. And essentially it caught it every single time, so no files were encrypted, which was what we want. So it was displayed an ability to definitely detect a zero-day ransomware, which is really important for our future because obviously that is becoming a major problem, especially with our tensions with Russia. So another test that was actually really important, that was more of a bonus, but it was important to know, is more on the user experience side, right? So when you're in a SIM or you've got something going through Splunk or you've got all these logs and events and stuff, we decided also to measure the noise ratio of how much alerting you get. So not to diss Microsoft Defender, but I've had moments where it thinks it quarantined something, and then when it scans it again, it keeps telling me that same thing is popping up, and it's always alerting, even though I said quarantine, right? So there are, quirks and stuff that exist with Microsoft sometimes, and the alerting is a lot and can get in the way sometimes while you're actually just trying to do work. In this case, both the install was super quiet, right, which was kind of impressive, but also we saw that it had 40% less noise, so it actually would catch more but signals so much less, meaning you would have like more pure logs, you'd have a lot less noise in the event log. Obviously Deep Instinct, when it integrates, will suppress any of the extra from Microsoft itself by itself, so that it kind of like streamlines the what you need to know about. But it's not like you weren't informed, but you didn't have a lot of noise that you have to search through, and that's some of the biggest problems when you're dealing with incident response or anything, is that you have to like literally find where the actual problem is, and it seemed to nail that and minimize a lot of the noise compared to Microsoft Defender's detection rates. So let's see, and then so I don't know if you want to talk about
that. Yeah, sure. No, thanks very much. I mean, that's a really detailed and focused just walkthrough of the whole evaluation. I just want to remind everyone, please, we've got one question coming in, which we'll answer in a second, but please, post your questions there. You can see them over on the right-hand side of the question mark. Lance will do his best to answer those, but if you're planning on attending Black Hat, as we are in a month or two in Vegas, Lance will be there. He's going to be participating in a panel, and we're very much looking forward, if you're there, to join that. Potentially even meet Lance in person, pose your questions there. So please, if you are at Black Hat, it's definitely worth putting that in your calendar. And that kind of brings us more now, because I love to focus on a discussion and debate, because we just want to hear the questions coming there, Lance. So I'm going to move to the Q&A, and let's go through a couple of questions, but please keep them coming. We do have a few minutes to answer those. So the first question here is, did you test with the enterprise version of Defender? Many say the basic version is pretty average compared to the enterprise version of Defender.
Yeah, we actually did load up, sorry, I wasn't clear about that, but we did actually load up a paid version of Microsoft Defender. That should be like an equivalent baseline for business use. So that would be, the enterprise thing. We set it up on its default configs for usability, obviously. It had smart screen. A lot of the get-ins were not that it's not good. It's that the code signing is pretty lenient in Microsoft, since it's kind of it's a separate piece, which is a smart screen for the end user. We've also seen this on Microsoft Defender Enterprise when we've done red teams with our other companies as well, where we are able to do some bypasses there based around code signing, and that's the thing. So yes, we did use Microsoft Defender Enterprise.
Great. Thank you very much. There's one other question there, Lance. Can we get recording? Yes, absolutely. That'll be available using the same link a few minutes after this webinar is finished. So please, do check that out and share with colleagues and partners and so forth. And one other question that we had coming in, I kind of had a wry smile at this. Your report says Deep Instinct blocked 96.4% of custom malware. Is this a good rating? many potential clients would worry that 4.6% can still get through. What would you say to them about this? So I'll hand over to you, Lance, maybe to answer generally in terms of how you perceive the prevention capabilities that you've analysed generally relative to, without naming names, of course, but I'd love to know your thoughts, and then I'll give my perspective.
Yeah, well, so the 4.6 that allowed us in was utilizing a code signing type of attack, right? And so when we actually look at that, is that is quite normal across most of the things, and there is going to be a point where sometimes the code signing is fully trusted. I mean, that's the entire idea of it. I'm not saying it's a perfect plan here, but I think it was essentially one or two code signed custom pieces of malware that it's never seen in its entire life, and it had a signed code on it. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily a bad thing. Obviously, Deep Instinct is going to always try to improve, from this. This is the point in that we actually release these like numbers straight as well, is that, as they see that, like maybe there's something they can do about like Smart Screen or like, something there with an integration, things like that. So it's more that this is also, you want to have those numbers because then it means we're going to improve. A lot of companies don't even do this kind of validation, and they'll just say 99% and you'll never get a good report on this. So, a 96 means that we can go up. So.
Absolutely. Thanks, Lance. So from my perspective within Deep Instinct, one of the things that I do in my role is I'm lucky to get our proof of values. They come every Friday, and I'm always keen to see how we've performed. And over time, since I joined the company, I've collected proof of values where we've been benchmarked against pretty much all the major players in the market, the established, some say legacy AV vendors, to the more the recent vendors that have come on board and become more prominent over the last 4 or 5 years. And with the exception of one, what I would call medium-sized player, we pretty much now have converted without changing a single letter or number or anything else, because it needs to be exactly as it was per the proof of value of the customer site. We've converted those into a series of slides where we benchmarked Deep Instinct versus other technologies. And again, anyone who's attending and wants to talk with a Deep Instinct representative can probably selectively share some of those relative to say, I'm using X, how did Deep Instinct perform here? But time and time again, we observe a couple of things. The first one is we stop that malware, those attacks, pre-execution. Some of the other technologies will stop, but they'll only stop it post-execution, which can cause a whole world of pain. And even then, not all of those attacks. The other thing that we observe is the CPU consumption, is just the relative cost involved in terms of running that particular technology is that we are far, far lower. And we've seen that even recently with the benchmarking test and evaluation that we did when we were running in parallel, for example, with Microsoft Defender. So my view in terms of when we look at, there's always room for improvement is, when we look at some of the more established vendors who test or companies who test technologies, is even with known threats, you'll still see them knocking around maybe the 96, 97%. There's still some things that they will miss. We're talking about homegrown, kind of nastiest, baddest malware lands that you could think of, and a whole multitude of attacks, and a very, very small fraction there. So again, there's always room for improvement. My simple answer would be, what do you say if they're to a customer who's worried about the 3.6 is, you know what?
4.6.
Number one, what technology are you using right now and how much would that have stopped? Because I'm not a betting man, but I bet it would stop a heck of a lot less. And secondly is, let's just run it in comparison and see what your existing incumbent tool is stopping or catching and what Deep Instinct catches. And I can't make any promises beyond that. Let's just simply see. Now a question for you, Lance, which I'll let you answer. Maybe I've got also some thoughts on it, which is, this is a somewhat controlled testing environment. How do you think Deep Instinct performs in the real world? And well, most controlled testing environments involve known threats. So I'd love your thoughts on this, Lance, because that's one of the things we didn't want to do.
So something I didn't put on record, but I actually ran Deep Instinct on our Windows machine, like separately, like a device separately, that we were doing red team development for a separate thing, just to like run it instead of Microsoft, just to run it and see if like how much it would interfere with me writing malicious stuff. We didn't record it in any way of that, but I can tell you that like there were times that I almost exploited myself. Of course, this is a throwaway box that we have for red teams, and then we redo it again. And there's a chance when you're experimenting with exploitations or shellcode that you haven't fully reversed, you might infect yourself. And I found that Deep Instinct actually in the world, at least for what I was doing, it didn't get in my way, but it definitely wouldn't let me do what I needed to do, which I think, given what I'm trying to do, which is, create malicious things, like, for a red team to target a client, I actually had to turn it off a lot. So just so that I could actually write malicious code. Again, I can't give you a strong, like, oh my gosh, it's real world, because again, like we did do it in the test, and I'm not going to, do that, but like we did run it also like just separately on a device for like 3 months, and it was definitely I felt like my computer wasn't any greater risk, and I felt that every time I was trying to put risk to that computer, it would call me out on it. That's probably the best I can say at this time. Again, it is a test environment. Our job is to be pretty much objective in that perspective. But I think, again, one of the things that one can do is also try it out in a real world environment, and see if it's got a proof of value there as well. So,
thanks, Lance. Last one for you here is, you may not want to answer that, but Lance, would you personally recommend Deep Instinct to your clients? That was not honestly, a client. I didn't put that.
I know. Yeah. Honestly, I would so far say yes. And the reason why is that I did use it as a normal user also during that time. Yes, I didn't like it at least catching me, but that's exactly what it would need to be doing, right? So I kind of like give it a bit of a hard time personally as well. But what I really loved also was the UX personally. Like I thought the portal was clean, smooth, integrations were there and ready to be, do it. The device management and removing or turning off the agent was super easy. The install was ridiculous. I've never seen an install so smooth in my life. And it just started working, right? There was no reboot. There was no this or that. It just started going. I tried to turn off the sys files and see if I could turn that off. It wasn't that easy at all. So it was just basically there. So for pre-execution, and if you need a pre-execution defense, because a lot of people do post-breach, type of technologies, I think that, yes, I would 1,000% recommend it to my clients. And we actually have already, so.
Thank you very much, Lance. We're coming just to the bottom of the hour here. We've got one more question, which we'll probably just for time, I'll answer offline, if that's okay, with the person who posted it, if it's possible. But just as a reminder, first of all, huge thank you, Lance, for joining and sharing your insights. And for everyone attending, as I mentioned, there's also a recording that's posted and available at the same link as that you registered on within a few minutes. Do check out also at the bottom there, you should be able to access the press release, the blog, and probably what's most of interest to you, the actual report. It's also on our website. It's not gated at all. We're trying to promote it as widely as possible, and the amazing work that Lance has done here to help validate Deep Instinct. So please do check that out. Other than that, appreciate all your time and hope this has been a valuable half hour or so. And thanks very much. Have a good rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.